I want to tell you a story about a man who sells auto parts. His name is David Ham. When you go to his website, you will see this video introduction. It starts with a garage door, and then that door opens onto another garage door. He walks into frame, and you see he's a round guy with a tight haircut and an old-school mustache. David is basically a Southern dad.
Hey, how you doing? I'm David.
He sells a rather specialized auto part.
Premium novelty testicles.
His store is called yournutz.com. That's with a Z. Him and his team sell all things Truck Nutz.
Now, most of you are familiar with the 8-inch sized Your Nuts. These were the original nuts on the net, the ones that started it all. Unfortunately, they just didn't have it for the lifted trucks. So David went back to the shop and developed these, the 16-inch monster Truck Nuts. They come in 5 different colors. You got flesh, you got black, and of course we got the blue balls. We won't ask my wife where we came up with the idea for this one.
You can pick up a pair of these big, veiny plastic balls for $50 plus shipping and handling.
Imagine the looks you'll get with these bad boys dangling in front of mama's face on the freeway.
The story of Truck Nutz tells you just about everything you need to know about the cultural politics of pickup trucks. This is a story of conservative identity politics, of moralistic liberal reaction, and of conservative counter-reaction. Between all that, cynical profiteers like David Ham. But there's a problem with David's business. He didn't happen to patent these testicles. I'm not really sure you can patent plastic testicles, though David does claim he's the first person to mass produce them. John Saller begs to differ. John owns bullsballs.com, a competitor, and he says he invented the original Truck Nutz. He got the idea one day when he was riding his 4x4 and a buddy yelled to him, "Show him you got balls." That was the eureka moment. That's when John says that the idea of Truck Nutz was born. The story of David and John descends into this bizarre Tiger King-style feud. It's mostly played out on old Web 1.0 websites with detailed anatomical discussions about who makes the best balls. You're probably thinking to yourself, why would anyone buy this crap? These are just dumb rednecks exhibiting their toxic masculinity. But there's a twist. It's not really that at all. In fact, the podcast Decoder Ring did their investigation on this, and they tried to figure out who actually buys Truck Nutz. They couldn't seem to find anyone who takes them seriously. The demographic is not macho rednecks, it's self-aware rednecks. These are irony-obsessed truck drivers who are lampooning the idea of the macho redneck. It's not that they're toxic misogynists, it's that we think they are, and they're responding to that. The podcast even has a professor on who likens Truck Nutz to camp in the gay community. The problem is, nobody got the joke. Everyone just got mad. In the early 2000s, this gag gift got caught in a political firestorm. There were a few legislative attempts to outlaw Truck Nutz. One in Maryland, one in Virginia, and one in Florida. None of them worked. And then a 65-year-old South Carolina woman got a $445 ticket for hanging her Truck Nutz. And it became this debate about the nature of obscenity and the limits of free speech. There are literally lengthy discussions about these stories on law blogs. So where do you stand? Are you a Truck Nutz free speech absolutist? Well, whatever you think, in the end, Grandma gets out of her ticket. So let them Truck Nutz swing. Sales explode because, predictably, when you tell people what they can't have, they're going to go out and try and buy it. And that's when the feud between Sallers and Ham really comes to matter. Because for these new customers, you wouldn't want to buy cheap imitation knockoff nuts. You want the real thing. So things get really intense between Ham and Sallers. Ham goes so far as to do a bit of industrial espionage, and he comes up with an alias, Bozzy Willis. Willis goes to Saller and buys a bunch of Saller's nuts, and then he resells them on a new website, allthenuts.com. This is totally without permission. Ham's scheme here is basically to become a nuts reseller. He wants his website to be the one-stop shop for all things truck nuts. This feud continues for years. It is back and forth in increasingly hostile screeds. Fake online reviews, complaints, charges of defamation, sociopathy, cease and desist letters. It's no joke. In the end, I really don't know who made the original Truck Nutz. I don't think anyone does. There was a few stories about this, including this one in Vice, which I'll link to, but as far as I can tell, nobody reached a definitive conclusion. Eventually, Saller and his team stepped back from the fight, mostly for health reasons. Unfortunately, Saller and one of his business partners passed away. I guess that kind of makes Ham the de facto winner in the war of the Truck Nutz. But he wasn't gracious about it. Ham's reaction? Quote, "I read that both his web guy and Saller had passed away, and I thought, whoa, they're dead? That's amazing." Today on Darts and Letters, we look at the cultural and political history of the truck. We'll be talking about why pickup trucks are now front and center in Canadian conservative politics. I'll ask Matt Christman of Chapo Trap House why the truck reigns as the symbol of conservative masculinity.
Because it stands for all the stuff that liberalism is against, the liberal Puritan hostility to excess. And here is something that embodies every idea of liberty that one could imagine.
What's even bigger than a pickup truck? A semi. Shane Hamilton tells us about the political economy of the trucking industry. Trucks themselves ushered in a new Walmart economy. In this new economy, farmers suffered and moved onto the road. They became independent owner-operators.
They didn't feel like their voice was being represented by either Democrats or Republicans. Trucking was a way of kind of representing, well, you could take control of your own destiny, this giant machine, and be in charge.
Plus, cars and trucks made our modern world, our modern, unsustainable world. The question is, can we unmake it? Or will we just try and come up with an electric techno fix? In fact, that's exactly what's happening. Because right now, you can buy cyber truck nuts for your Tesla. And guess what? There's even a petty feud about those. Because the more things change, the more things stay the same. I speak with architectural historian Gabrielle Esperdy about the idea of autotopia and about why the fantasy can never die.
The electric vehicle is very much like the Japanese import in the 70s. It's this notion of, we don't have to change anything except shift to electric. Literally, we've been down this road before. If we all had electric vehicles, it's not actually going to solve our social problems.
All that and more on Darts and Letters. Stay tuned.
I just wanted something big so I could impress you with my truck nuts.
Pickup trucks are now front and center in Canadian politics. In recent history, the story starts around 2016. Jason Kenney was then running to be Premier of Alberta, and he rode in on a truck.
Morning, I'm Jason Kenney, and great to be out here on the August long weekend. We'll be campaigning across the province in my blue Dodge Ram pickup right here. So this is a grassroots listening campaign.
That Ram pickup is the number 2 selling car in this country. The Ford F-Series is number 1. In fact, it has been for over 50 years. So it's no wonder conservatives will run on trucks. It's just good politics because Canadians love trucks. Fast forward a few years, and of course we have the so-called Freedom Convoy. And again, the truck becomes a symbol of a kind of rural conservative freedom. Since then, the Conservative Party of Canada has really latched on to the truck. One of the candidates for leadership even made a campaign ad that looks and sounds like an ad for a pickup truck. The ad starts with MP Scott Aitchison wearing a flannel shirt and getting into his truck. There is no irony here. The message is simple. This is a real man, a man who gets things done. Then there was this strange fake scandal. some federal government panel recommended applying a tax onto new trucks, the Liberals didn't actually plan to accept that recommendation, but this did not stop conservatives from throwing fits on Twitter. So, to understand why conservatives love their trucks and why we love to hate them, I called up Matt Christman. He is one of the hosts of the podcast Chapo Trap House.
Thanks for having me.
So, I'm curious just to get us kind of situated as like me being basically an effete urbanite who lives in downtown Toronto and never really knowing the pleasures of having like a big truck. You know, my first car was a 99 Volkswagen Golf, a little red thing that my mom gave me. So that's who I am. But I'm wondering just to know a little bit more about you. I know you're from Wisconsin, which is maybe a little bit more truck country than where you live now. Were you ever like a car guy or a truck guy?
No. I had a Ford Taurus in high school. I never had a truck. My stepfather was a truck driver though for many years, like big wheels, 18-wheelers. He had. So I rode in trucks certainly, but I never had any kind of specific cultural affinity for them. I mean, that was part of the whole cultural package of things that I kind of grew up defining myself against, like kind of the things that I, in my own head, sort of used to distinguish myself from the people around me. That's fascinating. So your stepdad, you say, like, did he drive you around in the cabin and stuff like that? No, by the time I met him, he wasn't doing that anymore. He still, though, to this, I don't know if he still does it. He's retired now, but he would plow for the county. Like he would go out and when it snowed, he would plow the roads with that kind of truck. But no, he wasn't out with the big rigs anymore. But he was a cross country in the 70s and 80s, I believe. He was a cross country truck driver, the big 18-wheelers. That's so fascinating. So what made you feel like that you wanted to be sort of in opposition to that? Just like being a teenager, essentially, or was there something about it that you remember that you didn't like? It just all seemed. I mean, like not specifically truck driving, because like that's a job, you know. That's one thing, but the culture of like automobiles in general just felt very wasteful, and I guess it just I never had the emotional connection or the identity connection to them. It was easier to just define myself by someone who was not, I mean, I was a pretentious teenager, so more than anything I wanted to distinguish myself in some way, so that was an easy way to do it. Fair enough. Weren't we all?